good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millzy, back with Hometown Commander. And we are back, per our usual arrangement, for an episode of Millzy Brews, where we brew deck. Man, I am really excited. We're very slowly, in a lot of ways, approaching Phyrexia. I can't wait to start brewing around Phyrexia. But we got about a week left, probably until we get all the spoilers, and I can start brewing around Phyrexia. So what I thought I'd do is catch up on some personal brews. Next week is actually going to be a more Kamigawa focused week. Kamigawa released almost a year ago, and of course I wasn't doing Millzy brews for that, so I thought it'd be fun to go back and do some Kamigawa commanders, but brew them as we would today. So it's going to be a ton of fun if you're interested in that. But today we have a fun choice. Green-white Lifegain. Lifegain is such an interesting strategy, and it's a deck archetype that I've tried to build many times. First with the commander we see in front of us. I've tried some of the black-white clerics. We've seen me brew that already on the channel. I tried to smash them together and make an Absent Lifegain deck, and that didn't really work out the way I wanted it to. But I think I realized that I like Trelasarra because it combines the two things I want to do: gain life and play as many angels as possible. So let's go through my deck tech for Trelasarra Moondancer. I'm really excited about this one. I'm really excited to put this back in the test box and enjoy it. It's got a lot of the cards I really love. Got a couple infinite combos, which is fun. And you can kill your opponent's with Aetherflux Reservoir, so that's always fun, right? But Trelasarra, green and a white for a 2/2 elf cleric. It says whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on it and scry 1. I think a lot of the lessons I learned from the last time I built this deck to this time is Trelasarra just tends to get massive. We're not building the deck around +1/+1 counters or taking advantage of the counters that are on Trelasarra. But I realized, I think this time around, that she just tends to get massive, and so we should probably do something with it. We're going to get to that in a second. I really quickly want to go over some of the fun combos off the start, and then we can kind of rock down into our normal thing where we go to the lands and start off that way. Probably my favorite card in this deck is Heliod Suncrowned. Heliod Suncrowned enables a lot of the life gain things we want to do, and that every time we gain life, we can put a counter on a target creature or enchantment we control. And then for 1 and a white, we can give one of our creatures lifelink. There's two combos, one combo really, but there's a couple combos that we can use this with. The main one is Walking Ballista. Walking Ballista is a creature that you pay any amount into X that you'd like. It comes down with that many counters, and you remove a counter from it to deal damage to a target. Well, what we do is we remove the counter to start the combo, select a player to deal damage to. We're going to respond with 2 mana from Heliod, giving Walking Ballista lifelink. What's going to happen is, of course, as long as our opponents don't respond, that lifelink trigger is going to go off, giving it lifelink. Walking Ballista is going to deal the 1 damage to one of our opponents. We're going to gain life. Heliod's going to see the life gain, put the counter back on Walking Ballista, and we're going to repeat that process until all of our opponents are dead. So that's a really fun way to do it as well. There's also a really fun combo here with Spike Feeder. So Spike Feeder is kind of cool because it says it comes into play with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. You can pay 2 and remove a counter from it to put a counter on another creature. But the cool part is you can remove a counter from it and gain 2 life. So the cool part here is we can remove a counter. Heliod's going to see the counter come off and the life being gained. We're going to gain life. We put the counter back on Spike Feeder, and we can repeat that process infinitely as long as there's no response to it. This is going to pair really well with a card like Aetherflux Reservoir, allowing us to dome the whole table. What this also can do is, depending on what we have out and what pieces we have, this can make our board pretty big for Blossoming Bog Beast. This can activate a whole number of things. If we have enough counters already on Spike Feeder, we could give counters to a whole board. Or if we have something like Archangel of Thune out, well, then that's just going to spread +1/+1 counters over the rest of our board. The cool part is Spike Feeder also combos with Archangel of Thune, because Archangel of Thune says whenever you gain life, put a counter on each creature you control. So basically with Spike Feeder, we can make our creatures out infinitely big, because we just take the counter off, gain the 2 life, put the counter back on everything, and repeat that process. growing everything else as well. And the cool part about Spike Feeder is it is an instant speed. So plenty of times in the past when I had this deck built or when I was messing around with it, you could do this at instant speed on your opponent's end steps, gain 100 life or whatever you want to do, and set yourself up to have good success on coming turns. This pairs really well with cards like Resplendent Angel and Crested Sunmare. Let's say if you gain life this turn, you make tokens, or if you gain X amount of life, you make tokens. So I think I've built Trelasarra to be slightly a token deck, even though it's not the main outcome of the deck. I think whenever you're gaining life, there are plenty of cards that allow you to make angel tokens, and of course, angel tokens are some of the best flyers tokens we can make to block well, attack well, and just be generally usable. Playing 34 lands, nothing fancy here because remember we're in 2 colors. So in all reality, in a lot of the cases, basics are just as good as the dual lands. We're just trying to play lands that can benefit us. Hall of Heliod's Generosity is going to help us get these enchantments back if we need to. Nykthos, if we have lots of creatures down, will allow us to tap for more mana. Seraph Sanctuary says whenever an angel comes in, we gain a life. Of course, if we're making those tokens, we're going to gain life that way. Bredeguard Stronghold seems interesting. You can pay 3 mana, tap it, sack it. Put a counter on each of 2 target creatures. They gain vigilance and lifelink until end of turn. We can only do that as we could go to sorcery. This seems kind of interesting because we could enable a combo this way, or we could just put our counters on good attackers and make interesting attacks. So I think that's kind of interesting. Of course, we're playing the Boseiju, Fable of Passage, and we're playing Faceless Haven. We're playing a decent amount of Snowlands, but the reason we're playing Faceless Haven is for the combo with Book of Exalted Deeds. So if you're not aware of the way this works, the bottom ability of Book of Exalted Deeds says we could pay 3, exile it, and put an enlightened counter on target angel. Well, when when Faceless Haven becomes a creature, it becomes a creature for 3 snow mana. It becomes a creature of all types. So Book of Exalted Deeds can see it, and the counter says you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. Activate only as a sorcery. Now, of course, if our opponents are playing any sort of single target land removal, then of course they can get rid of the Faceless Haven and take away this counter. But I think more often than not, this is going to help us push forward towards winning the game, getting a little bit more aggressive, and generally lock the game down, right? Platinum Angel's always been a good piece for that, locking the game down and giving yourself a little bit of leeway. Kind of an interesting combo, and I think since we want Book of Exalted Deeds already, because it gives us a 3/3 angel if we gain 3 or more life on our turn, which is going to be very easy with a bunch of the different things in our deck, why not have some synergy in there that can already be used, right? All right, coming up into the enchantments, we've got a pretty much smorgasbord of options, but let's just go one by one. We're going to talk about how they work. Angelic Accord, at the beginning of each end step, so each turn, if you've gained 4 more life this turn, you get a 4/4 angel. This is particularly great because we can start using it on our turn to get angel tokens, but this starts getting good on other people's turn if we can play with the Spike Feeder combo, or if people attack us and we can block with our life-linking creatures. This is going to make us more angel tokens and is going to give us more value. We're also playing things like Righteous Valkyrie that say whenever an angel or cleric comes in, we gain life equal to that creature's toughness. So the cool part is if we can use something like we can use something to make an angel token somehow, or gain life with one of our creatures, or we'll talk in a second about all these Soul Sister-esque type creatures that are going to gain us life when creatures are coming in. I think more often than not, we're going to hit the threshold where we acquire enough life on our opponent's turns to make us an angel token. Our procession is going to double the amount of tokens that are created. Armadillo Cloak and Unflinching Courage are here for the same reason, and that's that I've noticed in a lot of games, unless you find your trample enablers, Trelasarra is just obligatorily big and easy to block. It's easy to chump block. It doesn't have trample. It doesn't have anything. So Armadillo Cloak and Unflinching Courage are really in here to give Trelasarra trample once it gets big enough, and both of them will also give it lifelink. So even if they block it with enough damage to soak up the damage that could trample through, we're still going to gain all that life, and the trade won't be as bad. Trelasarra is only 2 mana, so the good part about Trelasarra is most of the time we can get a few casts of it out of the command zone before it becomes prohibitively expensive for us to play. Authority of the Consuls, all of our opponent's creatures come in tapped, and we gain a life whenever a creature comes into our opponent's control. This is one of those cards we want to see early, get down early, and gain a ton of life off of it. Cleric class, most well used for the first ability, which says that Whenever you gain life, you can gain that much life +1 instead. But the cool part is the level 2 is exactly the same as what Heliod is doing, or whenever we gain life, we can put a counter to our creature. So the cool part about Cleric class is this also does the same. This does a very similar strategy with Spike Feeder. This doesn't work with Walking Ballista straight out of the gate because Walking Ballista doesn't have lifelink naturally. It doesn't have any way to gain life when it does its damage. So, but if we put an Armadillo Cloak or an Unflinching Courage on it, then we could do that. So, Clear Class is just another piece that gets us there for those combos. Garruk's Uprising. Hopefully we can. Most of those angel tokens we're making are 4/4s and not 3/3s, so this is going to draw off each of those, but it's also just gives everything trample. It's going to make our attacks better. Intangible Virtue give all of our tokens vigilance, which is going to become important after we get enough of them. Especially those Crested Sunmare horses that are indestructible. It's always good to be able to just swing them at your opponents, make them block them, and then they're indestructible. As long as Crested Sunmare is there. But then they have vigilance, so they can block, and that's always super helpful. Marauding's Wake, it's a green-white staple to me. Doubles your land, gives all your creatures that +1/+1 bonus. Sigarda Summons, one of my favorite cards from last year or so, especially in a deck like this. It says creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them have base power and toughness 4/4, have flying, and are angels in addition to the other types. This is cool because when we get an Archangel of Thune or something like that starts spreading those counters out, now all those creatures have flying now, and now they're harder to block. Right now they can hit for more damage. Now we can push that combat victory through if we can't push the combo victory through. So this is one of those cards that is well worth the 6 mana if we have enough other creatures out. Although I still think, Archangel of Thune is more important than this if we're talking about classes of targets we need to search out first or make sure we have first. But I think Sigarda Summon still, more often than not, is a win more card that's going to do a lot for us. Smothering Tithe, I think that's pretty obvious as a white staple at this point. Gets you treasures, pumps your mana forward. I own a Survival of the Fittest, so I'm playing the Survival of the Fittest here. But I would say if you don't have a Survival of the Fittest, throw Defense of the Heart in this place. I think it does not the same thing, but it's going to help you. Defense of the Heart is an enchantment that says at the start of your turn, if an opponent controls 3 or more creatures, you get 2 free creatures from your deck and put them on the battlefield, which for this deck is going to open up any combo that you need. I just like Survival of the Fittest because when you get towards the end of the game, if on turn 8 I draw an Ariok Champion and I can't use it, I can pitch it to go get Heliod or whatever creatures we need. So I like the Survival of the Fittest. Sylvan Library, of course, going to help us draw at the start of the turn, pick our draw as well. And we don't mind paying that 4 life to get an extra card because of how much life we're going to gain over the course of a game. Test of Endurance, one of our win cons at the beginning of our upkeep. If we have 50 or more life, we win the game. This is not going to be very hard to do, especially if we can get the right pieces on the board. We're going to be getting this value, or we're going to be gaining this life. And Test of Endurance is going to force our opponents to remove it or risk losing the game. Trudge Garden, whenever we gain life, we can pay 2. If we do, we make a 4/4 Fungus Beast token. We most of the time are going to have spare mana, and so this just gives us another option to put extra tokens on the board, get extra value out of our tokens. And I wish we had so much cheaper options to make tokens, but it's one of them, and I think because of how often we're going to gain the life, it's going to become worth it to do it. We talked about Unflinching Courage, and then we're playing Utopia Sprawl and Wild Growth for the ramp. Coming up in the artifacts, we talked about Aether Flux Reservoir. Of course, the more spells we cast during our turn, the more life we gain, but that bottom ability, paying 50 to dome someone for 50, is going to be very important to help end out and take out some people. Arcane Signet, Soul Ring, Great Henge are our mana pieces. Great Henge is great here, giving creatures counters and drawing cards. Shadow Spear, another thing that's going to give something trample and lifelink. I think we always want to make sure we have something like this available. I think it's just going to be really important to have that trample and lifelink available to us. The other 2 are auras, right? So if that creature dies, we lose the aura. What I like about Shadow Spear is it's always around, and then for 1 mana we can remove all of our opponent's creatures hexproof and indestructible, which is very important when we need it. We talk about the Book of Exalted Deeds. And the Ozolith is here because Trelasarra tends to just get very big with a lot of counters. And so the Ozolith tends to be one of those things that will take. When Trelasarra dies, we can put all those counters on the Ozolith and then reuse them for the rest of our creatures. All right, coming up in the spells, you'll notice every single one of my sorceries is a ramp spell. And the reason that is because with this deck most of the time, you either gain a ton of life and you win the game, or you don't. So I've built the deck to be a teeny bit glass cannony in the sense that I don't have a board wipe. But I think that's okay because I think the deck's still going to do good enough anyway. We want to build up. We want to get the process going. We want to start drawing cards. And I think the added extra ramp does that. In the instant slot, we have Eladamri's Call and Lightened Tutor. For our tutors, Light Tutor can go get any of our artifacts or enchantments. The cool part about that is that can get Heliod as well because it is an enchantment if we need to do that. Eladamri's Call just goes and gets anything. We have some removal and Beast Within. And then Flawless Maneuver, Grand Crescendo are our protection spells, as well as Heliod's Intervention, or Heroic Intervention, I'm sorry. And then Path and Swords are our removals. So very, very, very low on the spell, the spell base. But I think it's because we kind of know what we want to do, and we're just going to do it. I think that's what makes the deck probably more fun, is that we're just focused on gaining life, we're focused on getting the value, and we're focused on overrunning our opponents when we can. I found more often than not you don't need an overrun effect, because once you start building your board up enough, you're just gonna get all the value you need. In the creature slot, we have a bunch of these creatures that have what most people refer to as Soul Sister cards, referring to Soul Warden and Soul's Attendant and Essence Warden. These creatures that say whenever another creature comes into play or comes into play under your control or at all, so Soul Warden says whenever a creature comes into play anywhere, you gain a life. Where some of our creatures say whenever a creature comes in the battlefield under our control, we gain a life. But most of them say anyone's control, we get a life. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Suture Priest is just under our control, but if we have a creature come into our opponent's control, we can have them lose a life. Distinguished Conjurer is under our control, we gain a life. Gala Greeters is under our control, we can gain 2 life, but only once per turn. Lunarch Veteran is under our control, we gain a life. You see, we have these creatures that all do a very similar thing, but they're going to come down and help us gain this incremental life. These paired with something like that Authority of the Consuls is going to help us gain this incremental life over time. We're pairing these really small creatures. We talked about Spike Feeder. We talked about the Walking Ballista. Speaker of Heavens can tap and make us angel tokens once we get to a certain life threshold, and that's great. Voice of the Blessed is going to grow every time we gain life, and once it gets 10 counters on it, it's indestructible. Becomes big. It's another great target for that Armadillo Cloak and the Unflinching Courage or the Shadow Spear. Valkyrie Harbinger and Resplendent Angel both do very similar things. At the beginning of each end step, if we gain enough life, we get an angel token. Harbinger gives us a 4/4. For gaining 4 life. Resplendent Cathar gives us a 4/4 for gaining 5 life. Shalai's in here to give us that hexproof on all of our creatures. We talked about Archangel of Thune, putting a +1/+1 counter on every creature when we gain life. Righteous Valkyrie gains us life every time an angel or a cleric comes in, which there are a good amount of clerics in the deck. A lot of these Soul Sister cards are clerics, so they're going to work as well with Righteous Valkyrie. Not every card in our deck is going to draw, like Sunscorch Region here. But Sunscorch Region is great because it says whenever our opponent casts a spell, we put a counter on it and we gain a life. Well, if our opponents cast a bunch of spells on their turn, we're going to gain a ton of life and potentially proc. These effects: Prosperous Innkeeper. Again, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under our control, we gain a life. Daxos, very similar. Whenever a creature you control enters the battlefield or dies, you gain a life. So that's helpful as well. And its toughness is equal to our devotion to white. So it being a double white can help us with Heliod. Since Heliod needs 5 devotion to become a creature, Daxos can help it become a creature. And then one of my favorite creatures in the list, Lyra, Dawnbringer, giving all of our other angels +1/+1 and lifelink. This is great when we have our tokens out, because then all of our tokens have lifelink, and they, once you get one of these 2 out and you make, with Lyra and you make 1 or 2 angel tokens, now you're gaining enough life as long as you're attacking or blocking to just make more and more and more. And then we're playing 2 planeswalkers because I love my boy Johnny. I'm still sad, of course, with the things that happen in Dominaria United, but I still love a Johnny. We're playing Strength of the Pride, +1, gain life equal to the number of creatures you control, plus the number of planeswalkers you control. That's great. It's just going to gain us a ton of life most of the time. -2, we make into Johnny's Pridemate token that says whenever you gain life, put a counter on it. And then a 0 says if you have at least 15 more then your starting life total, exile a Johnny and each artifact and creature your opponents control. That's pretty great because once we get a Johnny big enough by gaining that life or making those tokens, then we can just one-sided wrath our opponents, which is great. And then we're also playing a Johnny the Great-Hearted, giving all of our creatures vigilance, which is the really important part there. +1 just gains 3 life. That's going to turn on Angelic Accord most of the time. That's going to turn on all those effects. And then -2 puts a counter on each creature we control and a loyalty counter on each planeswalker we control. More often than not, we want that for the +1/+1 counters on all of our creatures. So that's a pretty quick and dirty, I think a real true first pass at Green-White Lifegain. I mean, at the end of the day, I haven't played this deck in a very long time, and this is a deck that I intend to test. So maybe in the future, we'll do an update on a deck like this and kind of how it progresses over time. We did see a new card from Jumpstart 2022, which is pretty cool, make the list. The cool part I like about that is that 4 and a white for a tap to blink another creature is pretty cool. You can blink an angel and gain some life off a Righteous Valkyrie. There's plenty of things we can do. We could use that as worst case scenario protection if need be to protect a creature if our opponent's trying to remove it. I think the deck is meant to be built to do one thing, and that's gain life and gain life efficiently. And so my hope is that the pile that I've put in front of us does that efficiently enough. I'm excited to test it out and find that out. And if not, I will be making some changes over time. Cool part, though, is the deck's going to be linked down in the description for you if you want to take this deck as it sits right now and enjoy it and try it out for yourself. I think this is a fun core to start with. It's not terribly expensive. I think a lot of the cost comes from things like Great Henge and Survival of the Fittest, but if you cut that in the Sylvan Library and you cut some of the more expensive cards, I think this should be a fairly cheap deck to mess around with, other than the Angels, of course. But I think the Angels really fit and help our strategy for what we're trying to do. What do you guys think? Green-White Lifegain, did I do good? Did I do bad? Pardon me, what do you think of Green-White Lifegain? Is this the commander you would choose? Would you pick something different? I always like to hear from you guys down in the comments what you guys think, and more or less what suggestions you have. There's a lot of times where, I do this deck in one fell swoop. That's the point of the show, is that I don't sit around and contemplate for hours. This is my first pass at a deck, trying to give an idea of what I think I would start out with. And then, of course, you guys always have suggestions as far as cards I miss, and I think that's so pretty cool. It's fun to find out things that you missed, because at the end of the day, Magic has a lot of cards in the repertoire that we can use for Commander. It's very hard to always know what's the best cards you can play and what's the perfect card to play in any situation. But I think that's why I always try to preach testing your deck so much, is because you learn over time what's good in a deck. You figure things out, and in that way you become not only a better player, but you become a better deck builder as well. But thank you guys so much for watching. Drop me a like I said, comment what you think of the deck. Subscribe if you want to see some more decks. Like I said, next week it's going to be almost all Kamigawa commanders or Kamigawa themed decks. And then that will be the last week before we can get into Phyrexia. And I'm really excited about Phyrexia. I'm really excited to start with Phyrexia, and I've got a bunch of stuff planned for Phyrexia. So that is all I have for you guys, and I will see you next time.